I'm Christa Vance, 32, a financial analyst in Denver, Colorado. Last week my brother texted, "Come join us for dinner, it's on the family." I should have seen the catch. At the restaurant I walked in hopeful despite everything. The table was buzzing, my family laughing, glasses clinking. The waiter handed me a menu marked "Guest Discount Drinks Only." I froze. My dad leaned close, muttering, "You're not on the list." My brother smirked, avoiding my eyes. Something snapped. I smiled tightly, said, "I'll take your best cocktail and a bottle of champagne." The waiter blinked but wrote it down. I slid the order to their tab. Minutes later, the bill landed. My mom's voice sliced through the noise. "Who ordered a $300 champagne?" I stood, dropped my napkin, and walked out, their murmurs trailing me. That night was just the spark of something bigger, something they'd regret starting. If you've ever been blindsided by those closest to you, smash that subscribe button and stay with me. This story's about to unravel a tangle of secrets you won't see coming. That dinner wasn't the first time my family let me down. I've spent years caught in their cycle of demands, always hoping they'd see me as more than a solution to their problems. It started small, but it never stayed that way. My brother Corey couldn't keep up with his rent. $800 one month, $1,200 the next. I sent the money believing he'd find his footing. He didn't. Over 2 years, I gave him $12,000 each transfer, a silent plea for him to take responsibility. He'd just text, "Can you help me out again?" like it was nothing. My mom Karen leaned on me after a surgery went south. Her hospital bills hit $4,000. I paid them thinking she'd be grateful. Instead, she called weeks later, voice heavy, "We're barely getting by. You're our only hope." I sent 3,000 more, waiting for a sign she valued me. It never came. My dad Roger was no different. His truck was a constant drain, $2,500 for a new radiator, $1,000 for brakes. I covered it, hoping he'd stand on his own. He didn't. He'd say, "You've got it good, don't you?" As if my hard work was his to claim. My younger sister Shannon asked less often. Once she needed $500 for a work crisis. I sent it expecting a real thank you. She sent a quick text and went quiet. I kept track: 7,000 to my mom, 3,500 to my dad, 1,500 to my sister. Every dollar weighed on me, a reminder of their expectations. I wasn't just helping, I was their crutch. The worst part wasn't the money. It was how they acted, like I owed it. Corey's casual, "You're the successful one," cut deep. Karen's sighs about their struggles made me feel guilty for my own stability. Roger's gruff lectures about family duty left me hollow. I'd wait for a gesture, a word, anything to show they saw me as more than a wallet. Instead, they'd call with new requests, each one chipping away at my patience. I held on to the hope they'd change, that they'd see my sacrifices. Each time that hope slipped further away. My cousin Jason jumped in whenever I pushed back. "Family sticks together," he'd say, his tone sharp, like I was betraying them by hesitating. He wasn't after my money, he was guarding their system, making sure I stayed in line. His words stung, planting doubts. Was I wrong to want boundaries? Was I selfish for protecting what I'd earned? I wasn't. But his judgment made me second-guess myself. Growing up, I was taught family comes first. We weren't rich, but we scraped by in our Denver suburb. When I started my career, their requests felt reasonable. A few hundred here, 1,000 there. I wanted them to be proud to see my success as ours. But it shifted. Corey stopped trying to manage his finances. Karen's emergencies never ended. Roger acted like my income was theirs to tap. Even Shannon, who I thought got me, fell into the pattern. Their demands grew, and I was drowning in them. I tried to set limits once. Last year I told Corey I couldn't cover his rent again. He went silent, then said, "I'll figure it out." 3 days later, Karen called, voice breaking. "He's going to lose his place." I sent $1,000, trapped by guilt. Every time I said no, someone, Roger, Karen, Jason, would push back. "You've got it better than us," my dad would mutter. "Don't turn your back on family," Jason would say. Their words burrowed into me, making me question if I was the problem. I'd cave, hoping this time they'd respect me. They didn't. The stress was relentless. I'd check my bank account, see the gaps their requests left. I worked hard, save for a future, a home, maybe stability. But every dollar I gave pulled me further from that. I started dreading their calls, their texts, the weight of their voices. I wasn't living extravagantly, but they acted like I was. My nights grew restless, my patience thin. I kept believing in family, in their promises. Corey's "I'll pay you back" Karen's. "This is the last time, Rogers, we'll make it work." All empty. By the time my brother sent that dinner invite, I was worn out. I wanted to believe it was a chance to feel like family again, not just their fallback. But deep down, I knew their pattern. That night wasn't just a meal, it was the start of seeing them clearly, of realizing I couldn't keep carrying their weight. The night of the dinner, I drove to the restaurant with a flicker of hope. Maybe this time my family would show they cared. I pulled up to a sleek Denver steakhouse, its glow promising something special. Inside, the hostess led me to a corner table where my family, my brother, my cousin, my mom, and my dad sat laughing, glasses raised. Their plates were piled high with steak and lobster wine flowing freely. I smiled, expecting a warm welcome. Instead, the waiter handed me a slim menu labeled "Drinks Only." I froze, my smile fading. "What's this?" I asked, holding up the menu. Roger leaned over, his voice low but sharp. "You're not on the meal plan, Christa." Corey smirked, slicing into his steak. Jason let out a chuckle, avoiding my eyes. Karen didn't look up, just sipped her wine. My chest tightened. They'd invited me to their feast but left me out like I was an afterthought. I scanned their faces, searching for a hint of guilt. There was none, just smug satisfaction. I could have walked away then, but something snapped. I wasn't their doormat anymore. I caught the waiter's eye and said, "Bring me your best cocktail and a bottle of champagne, the $300 one." He hesitated, glancing at the table. I leaned in, voice steady. "Put it on their tab." The waiter nodded and left. I sat back, sipping my water, watching them squirm. Their laughter died, replaced by awkward glances. Good. Let them feel it. The champagne arrived, sparkling in its chilled bottle. I poured a glass, raised it slightly, and said, "To family." My tone dripped with edge. Karen forced a smile, but Roger's jaw clenched. Corey muttered something under his breath, and Jason shot him a look. They dug into their food, but the mood had shifted. I didn't touch the cocktail or champagne, I didn't need to. This wasn't about drinking, it was about making a point. For years I'd carried their burdens, and they'd repaid me with this, a public snub, a menu that screamed I didn't belong. Half an hour later, the bill landed. The waiter set it in front of Roger, who opened it and froze. Karen peeked over, her eyes widening. "Who ordered a $300 champagne?" she snapped, her voice cutting through the restaurant's hum. Every head at the table turned to me. I stood, tossed my napkin on the chair, and said, "You invited me, didn't you?" Corey's face reddened. Jason started to speak, but I cut him off. "Save it." I walked out, their stunned silence trailing behind me. The cool night air hit my face, but my pulse was racing. As I reached my car, the weight of their betrayal settled in. They hadn't just left me off the meal plan, they'd planned it, laughing while I played the fool. Roger's words, Corey's smirk, Jason's chuckle, Karen's silence. They'd orchestrated this to remind me of my place. I'd spent years giving them everything, hoping for respect. Instead, they'd humiliated me, treating me like an outsider at their table. The sting was sharp, but it wasn't new. It was just louder, clearer, impossible to ignore. I slid into my driver's seat, gripping the wheel. My phone buzzed, probably Karen or Corey with some excuse. I didn't check. I was done swallowing their lies. That night wasn't just a dinner gone wrong. It was a breaking point. I'd let them walk over me for too long, but no more. I wasn't their bank, their backup, their punching bag. They thought they could dismiss me, mock me, and I'd keep coming back. They were wrong. As I drove away, one thought burned clear: I'd never let them make me feel small again. 2 days later, my family showed up at my apartment unannounced. The doorbell buzzed, and there they were, my brother, my mom, and my dad crowded in my hallway. Their faces were tight eyes, narrowed. I let them in my stomach, nodding. I knew why they were here, the $300 champagne I'd stuck them with at the restaurant. They weren't here to apologize. They were here to attack. Corey spoke first, his voice sharp. What was that stunt with the champagne? He leaned against my counter, arms crossed like he had the right to demand answers. Karen chimed in, her tone accusing. You embarrassed us in front of everyone. Roger stood by the door, glaring. You think you're clever, huh? He said, his words heavy with scorn. I stood in the middle of my living room, heart pounding but steady. They thought they could corner me, guilt me into backing down. They were wrong. I took a breath and said, You invited me to a dinner where I wasn't even allowed to eat. You laughed about it. Their faces froze. Karen opened her mouth, but I kept going. I've paid for Corey's rent for years, covered your medical bills, Mom, fixed your truck, Dad, even helped Shannon when she asked. And you repay me with a drinks-only menu. Corey scoffed, rolling his eyes. Don't make it a big deal. It was just a mix-up. A mix-up, I almost laughed. You planned it, I said, staring him down. You're blowing this out of proportion, he said. We're family. You don't pull stunts like that. I didn't flinch. Karen's eyes welled up, her voice trembling. How could you do this to us? She said, as if I'd betrayed them. I recognized that tone, her old trick to make me feel guilty. It didn't work this time. I'm done, I said, my voice firm. I've carried you all long enough. No more money, no more favors. Roger's face reddened. You're cutting us off, he barked. After everything we've done for you, I met his gaze. What have you done, Dad? Tell me, because all I remember is giving. Corey threw his hands up. You're acting like we're leeches, he said. We're just struggling. I shook my head. Struggling doesn't mean humiliating me at a restaurant. Struggling doesn't mean laughing while I'm left out. The room went quiet, the air thick with their anger. Karen wiped her eyes, but I saw no real tears. Roger clenched his fists, muttering, ungrateful. Corey glared, his voice low. You'll regret this. I didn't waver. I regret letting you walk over me for years, I said. Get out. They didn't move at first, stunned by my resolve. I pointed to the door. Now. Karen gasped, clutching her purse. You're breaking our family apart, she said, her voice sharp. I didn't answer. Corey stormed out first, followed by Roger, who didn't look back. Karen lingered, her face a mix of hurt and fury. You've changed, she said. I nodded. Good. I shut the door behind her. I stood alone in my apartment, my pulse steady for the first time in days. Their accusations echoed, but they couldn't shake me anymore. I'd spent years giving them everything, money, time, patience, only to be mocked and dismissed. Now they'd come to my home demanding I bend again. They thought I'd cave like always. But I wasn't that person anymore. I'd drawn my line and I wasn't stepping back. A week after the confrontation, my inbox pinged with an email from my mom. I stared at the subject line, "We need to talk." My gut told me it wasn't an apology. I opened it, and Karen's words hit like a slap. You've been hiding a savings fund from us, Christa. That money could help your family. Share it or you're no daughter of mine. My blood ran cold. That fund was my private lifeline, years of late nights at my Denver office saved for a new apartment. I'd never told anyone in the family. How did she know I reread the email, my hands shaking? Karen didn't just demand the money, she accused me of betraying them, as if my hard-earned savings belonged to them. Her tone was sharp, entitled, like I'd stolen something by daring to plan my future. I sat at my desk, the silence of my apartment deafening. My family had mocked me at that dinner, attacked me in my own home, and now they were digging into my private finances. The violation burned deeper than any snub or shout. I needed answers. The only person outside the family who knew about my savings was my Aunt Linda. I'd mentioned it to her months ago during a rare coffee meetup, trusting her to keep it quiet. I dialed her number, my voice tight. Did you tell Karen about my savings, I asked? Linda hesitated. then sighed. I mentioned it to her, Christa. She was worried about the family and I thought I cut her off. You thought it was okay to share my private business? My voice rose, anger spilling over. Linda stammered, I didn't mean to hurt you. But she had. She'd handed my secret to the people who'd been draining me for years. I hung up, my chest heaving. Linda's betrayal was a new wound. I'd trusted her, thinking she was different outside their cycle of demands, but she'd fed their entitlement, giving them ammunition to come after me again. Karen's email wasn't just a request, it was a calculated move, using my own dreams against me. I hovered over the delete button, then pressed it, erasing her words. They didn't get to control me anymore, not after everything. I wasn't taking chances with my future. I called a lawyer that afternoon, a contact from work who specialized in financial protection. I need to safeguard my assets, I told her, voice steady. My family's trying to get into my savings. She asked for details and I laid it out. Karen's email, Linda's leak, years of their demands. She promised to draft a plan, a trust to lock my saving steps, to shield my accounts. It wasn't cheap, but it was worth it. My money was mine, earned through my sweat, not theirs to claim. As I hung up, the weight of their intrusion settled in. That savings fund was more than money. It was my escape, my chance at a home, a life free from their grasp. Karen's email wasn't just greedy. It was an invasion, a demand to rip away my security. Linda's role hurt worse. She'd been my confidant, the one I thought understood. Now I saw her clearly complicit in their game. They weren't just after my money anymore. They were trying to break my resolve. I leaned back in my chair, staring at my laptop screen. My phone stayed silent. No calls, no texts from Corey, Jason, or Roger since I'd kicked them out. Karen's email was their new tactic, a way to guilt me back into line. But I wasn't the same Christa who'd caved to their tears or lectures. I'd spent years giving them everything, only to be mocked, dismissed, and now exposed. This wasn't just about money, it was about my right to my own life. I closed my laptop, my decision clear. I wasn't just protecting my savings, I was guarding my future. They'd crossed a line, thinking they could demand what I'd built. Linda's betrayal showed me no one in that family could be trusted, not with my plans, not with my peace. I'd let them in too long, but that was over. My dreams were mine, and I'd fight to keep them, no matter what they threw at me next. 2 weeks later, my phone lit up with notifications. I glanced at the screen, expecting work emails, but it was Facebook and Instagram buzzing with activity. My stomach dropped as I opened a post from my brother Corey. It was a vague, biting caption. Some people turn their backs when family needs them most. The comments were worse. My dad Roger wrote, shameful behavior. My mom Karen added, we raised her better. My cousin Jason chimed in, selfishness hurts everyone. Their words stung, each one a public jab meant to paint me as the villain. I scrolled further, my hands trembling. Corey had posted a photo from the restaurant dinner, my empty chair in focus, with a caption, guess who bailed Jason? Shared it, adding priorities. Right friends I hadn't spoken to in months, liked the posts, some even commenting. What happened? Or, that's cold. My inbox filled with messages from old classmates, coworkers, even a distant cousin. Is this true? Christa? Why are you fighting with your family? The questions piled up, each one twisting the knife. They didn't know the years I'd spent bailing them out, only the story my family was selling. I sat on my couch, staring at my phone. The hurt was raw, like a wound reopened. They weren't just attacking me privately anymore, they'd taken it public, airing their lies to anyone who'd listen. Corey's post was calculated, framing me as heartless. Jason's share was a power play, leveraging his clean image to make their story stick. Karen and Roger's comments sealed it, rallying strangers to judge me. They wanted to shame me into submission, to make me feel small in front of the world. I wanted to fire back, to post a rebuttal exposing their years of demands. But I stopped myself. Responding would only fuel their drama, giving them the attention they craved. Instead, I muted their profiles and set my accounts to private. My finger hovered over the block button, but I held off. I wasn't running from them. I was done playing their game. Their posts couldn't undo the truth I'd given everything, and they'd thrown it back in my face. The messages from friends hurt most. A close colleague, Sarah, texted, "Saw your brother's post. You okay?" Another friend, Mike, wrote, "Didn't know things were this bad with your family." I read their words, my throat tight. I typed replies, then deleted them. How could I explain years of manipulation in a text? How could I sum up the dinner snub, the confrontation, the email demanding my savings? I left their messages unanswered, the isolation sinking in. Their questions weren't cruel, but they carried my family's narrative, not mine. I leaned back, my apartment quiet except for the hum of my phone. This wasn't just about hurt feelings, it was a deliberate campaign to ruin my name. They'd lost their grip on my money, so they'd turned to public opinion, hoping to break me. But I wasn't breaking. I'd protected my savings, set boundaries, and now I needed to end this for good. I started planning a final meeting, one where I'd face them on my terms, not theirs. I grabbed a notebook and wrote down what I'd say. No yelling, no tears, just the truth. I'd tell Corey his post didn't change the fact that I'd carried him for years. I'd tell Jason his loyalty to them didn't make him noble. I'd tell Karen and Roger their comments only proved they saw me as a tool, not a daughter. This meeting wouldn't be about changing them, they'd never change. It was about closing the door, making it clear I was done. As I wrote, my resolve hardened. Their social media stunt was their last weapon, and it hadn't worked. I wasn't the selfish one, they were twisting my life into their story for likes and sympathy. I'd spent too long letting them define me. Now I was taking that power back. This final confrontation would be my stand, not for their approval, but for my peace. I closed my notebook, ready to face them one last time. 3 weeks later, Corey texted about another family dinner. I almost ignored it, but this was my chance to end things for good. I drove to a small Denver diner, its neon sign flickering. Inside, my family, my brother, my cousin, my mom, my dad, and my younger sister, sat at a corner booth, their faces tense. I slid into the seat, my notebook plan from weeks ago clear in my mind. This wasn't about reconciliation, it was about closure. Corey started, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Nice to see you show up, Christa." Karen leaned in, her tone sharp. "Your little online silence didn't fix anything." Roger grunted. "Still acting high and mighty?" Jason crossed his arms, adding, "You've been dodging us, acting selfish." Even Shannon, usually quiet, muttered, "You've changed." Their words were a coordinated hit meant to guilt me back into their fold. I let them talk, my hands steady on the table. When they paused, I spoke, voice calm but firm. "You call me selfish, but let's talk truth. I paid your rent, Corey, while you bought gadgets. I covered your medical bills. Mom, only for you to demand my savings. I fixed your truck, Dad, and got demands in return. Even you, Shannon, took my help and gave nothing back." Their faces tightened, but I kept going. "You mocked me at a dinner, attacked me in my home, and smeared me online. That's not family. That's using me." Karen's eyes narrowed. "You're twisting everything she said," Corey scoffed. "You're just mad we called you out." Jason leaned forward, voice low. "You're tearing us apart, Christa." Roger slammed his hand on the table. "You owe us respect." I didn't flinch. "Respect," I said. "I gave you everything, money, time, my trust. You gave me lies and insults." Shannon looked down, silent, but the rest glared, their manipulation laid bare. I stood, my voice unwavering. "I'm done being your bank, your punching bag, your scapegoat. This ends now." Karen gasped. "You can't walk away from family." I met her eyes. "You walked away from me first." I tossed a $20 bill on the table for the tip, my final gesture, and walked out. Their voices rose behind me, but I didn't look back. The diner door swung shut, and I felt a weight lift. I blocked their numbers in my car, cutting them off for good. 5 months later, I was in my new apartment, a cozy place I'd bought with my protected savings. My life was quiet, free from their demands. I'd heard through a mutual friend about the fallout. Corey was facing financial difficulties, unable to lean on me for rent. His social media rants turned friends away, leaving him isolated. Jason's reputation took a hit when colleagues saw through his family man act after his posts about me surfaced. Karen and Roger's house was falling apart, repairs piling up without my help. They'd stopped hosting their lavish dinners, their pride dented. Shannon, though, had moved out, found a job, and started standing on her own. I was glad for her, but it didn't change my choice. I sat in my apartment, sunlight streaming through the window, and reflected on what I'd learned. Family isn't a free pass to take without giving. Their manipulation, guilt trips, public shaming demands on my savings showed they valued my money over me. Cutting them off wasn't easy, but it was right. Prioritizing myself wasn't selfish. It was survival. I'd spent years trying to please them only to lose pieces of myself. Now I was whole, building a life on my terms. To everyone who's followed this story, thank you for listening. Toxic relationships, even with family, can drain you, but you have the power to walk away. Choose yourself, set boundaries, and don't let guilt hold you back. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in my place? Share below, and let's keep this conversation going. Your support means everything.
Don't you dare! You're not going to deny me this opportunity, I said, my voice rising as I stood in Thomas Miller's office doorway. The department head looked up from his desk with a satisfied grin that made my stomach turn. After a decade of dedicated service to Peterson Engineering, this was how it would end? My name is Kaylee Thompson, and at 52, I've spent the last 10 years of my career at one of San Francisco's leading engineering firms. Through 3 company restructures, 2 economic downturns, and countless late nights perfecting designs, I had proven myself invaluable, or so I thought. Kaylee, please sit down. Thomas motioned to the chair across from his desk, his voice carrying that rehearsed sympathy that HR must teach in management training. We're bringing in someone younger for your role. After 10 years, it's time to move on. The words hung in the air between us. Someone younger. Not someone more qualified or experienced, just younger. I felt the familiar heat of indignation rising in my chest, but took a deep breath instead. This wasn't the time for an emotional outburst. I nodded calmly. I appreciate the notice, Thomas. My muted response clearly wasn't what he expected. Thomas blinked, momentarily thrown off script. Well, good. I'm glad you understand. The transition will take place over the next month. We'll need you to train your replacement, Olivia. She graduates from Berkeley next week. I smiled thinly. Of course. What Thomas didn't know, what nobody in the department knew, was that the next board meeting would be special. Very special indeed. Will there be a formal announcement? I asked, my voice steady. We'll announce it at the department meeting on Monday, Thomas replied, already turning his attention back to his computer screen, dismissing me. HR will be in touch about your severance package. I stood up and smoothed my blazer. I see. And the quarterly board meeting is still next Thursday at 2 p.m.? Thomas looked up, confusion flickering across his face. Yes, but that's not something you need to concern yourself with anymore. Just double-checking my calendar, I said lightly. Will CEO Davis be in attendance? Thomas's eyes narrowed slightly. Why do you ask? Just curious, I replied with a shrug. Well, I won't take up any more of your time. As I walked out of his office, I felt strangely calm. 10 years at Peterson Engineering had taught me patience, resilience, and the importance of knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. The next board meeting would reveal everything, and Thomas Miller's smug satisfaction would evaporate faster than morning fog on the bay. Some secrets were worth keeping, even when you were being shown the door. As I walked back to my desk, I couldn't help but smile at the irony of it all. 10 years of dedication reduced to a casual dismissal in a 15-minute meeting. Yet here I was, holding on to information that would completely flip the script. Everything okay? Asked Javier, my colleague from the adjacent cubicle. His eyes held genuine concern. He'd seen too many people walk that same path from Thomas's office, faces drawn with shock and disappointment. Never better, I replied, voice low enough to avoid attracting attention. Just the usual Friday drama. I hadn't told anyone about the private meeting with CEO Catherine Davis 3 weeks ago. It had been unexpected. A call directly to my personal cell on a Sunday afternoon while I was tending to my rooftop garden. "Kaylee, we need to talk about your future at Peterson," Catherine had said, her normally formal tone relaxed and direct. "Not at the office. Can you meet me at Bayview Cafe tomorrow at 7 a.m.? The memory of that morning was still vivid. Catherine had arrived early, securing a private corner table with a stunning view of the Golden Gate Bridge shrouded in morning mist. "I'll get straight to the point," she'd said after we exchanged pleasantries. "The board is restructuring our leadership approach. We've been watching your work on the Westlake project. Your innovative solutions saved us millions and impressed our biggest clients." I'd been preparing for bad news, not praise. "Thank you, but we want you on the executive board," Catherine had continued, "as our new chief operations officer. You understand both the technical and human elements of our business in a way nobody else does." The offer had been unexpected and overwhelming. A seat on the board, overseeing all operational aspects of Peterson Engineering, including Thomas's department. "Why me?" I'd asked, still processing the magnitude of the opportunity. "Because you see what others miss," Catherine had replied simply. "And because it's time we had someone at the table who remembers what it's like to be in the trenches." The secrecy had been Catherine's idea. "The board vote is just a formality, but I need to manage the politics carefully. Some members, particularly those with connections to Thomas, might try to interfere if they knew beforehand. So I'd signed the contract with only Catherine and the company's legal counsel present. For 3 weeks, I'd attended early morning strategy sessions disguised as vendor meetings in my calendar. I'd reviewed confidential reports and helped draft a new operational framework after hours. All while Thomas plotted my removal. Back at my desk, I checked my phone. A message from Catherine. "Contracts filed. Announcement prepared. Still on for Thursday." I texted back a single thumbs-up emoji. For the rest of the afternoon, I diligently worked on transition notes for my supposed replacement. Thomas passed by twice, looking pleased with himself each time. Let him enjoy this moment of perceived victory. The real revelation was just 6 days away. The weekend dragged on endlessly as I prepared for what would undoubtedly be the most consequential week of my career. On Monday morning, I arrived at the office early, dressed in the same professional attire I'd worn for years, nothing that would signal the impending change in my status. The department meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. in the main conference room. I took my usual seat near the middle of the table, not too prominent, not too hidden. As engineers and project managers filtered in, the room buzzed with the usual Monday morning energy, conversations about weekend activities, project deadlines, and industry gossip. Thomas entered last, followed by a young woman I'd never seen before. She couldn't have been older than 23, with a nervous smile and wide eyes that took in the room with undisguised excitement. "Good morning, everyone," Thomas announced, clapping his hands together. "Before we dive into project updates, I have an important announcement." The room quieted immediately. Several of my colleagues glanced in my direction, sensing what was coming. "I'd like to introduce Olivia Parker, who will be joining our team as senior design engineer. Over the next month, she'll be working closely with Kaylee, who will be leaving us to pursue other opportunities." There it was. The corporate euphemism for being pushed out. I kept my expression neutral as curious and sympathetic looks turned my way. "Kaylee has been with us for 10 years, Thomas continued, his tone suggesting he was bestowing a great honor upon me by acknowledging my service. "And we appreciate her contributions. Please make Olivia feel welcome as she transitions into this important role." Olivia gave a small wave. "I'm really excited to join the team. I've heard so many great things about Peterson Engineering." As the meeting progressed through project updates and quarterly targets, I noticed Thomas watching me carefully, perhaps expecting an outburst or sign of distress. Instead, I participated normally, offering insights on my current projects and volunteering to help with a challenging client issue. After the meeting, Olivia approached me tentatively. "Ms. Thompson, Thomas said you'd be showing me the ropes this week." "Of course," I replied, gesturing for her to follow me to my workspace. "And please, call me Kaylee." As we walked, I felt a pang of sympathy for Olivia. She was merely a pawn in Thomas's game, unaware of the complicated dynamic she'd stepped into. "First thing you should know," I said once we reached my desk, "is that engineering at Peterson is as much about politics as it is about technical skill." Olivia looked surprised by my frankness. I thought it would be more merit-based." I smiled. "It should be. Maybe someday it will be again." The next 3 days passed in a blur of knowledge transfer sessions, project handoffs, and careful documentation of my workflow. Through it all, I maintained my professional demeanor, giving Olivia every advantage I could without revealing my true circumstances. On Wednesday afternoon, Catherine called a company-wide meeting for Friday morning, the day after the board meeting. The email mentioned exciting organizational changes and new leadership announcements. Thomas read the message with a frown, clearly not privy to whatever Catherine had planned. "Do you know what this is about?" he asked me casually as he passed my desk. "No idea," I lied smoothly. "Perhaps they've finally found someone to fill that VP position that's been vacant." He nodded, satisfied with my ignorance, and walked away. Thursday was approaching rapidly, and with it, the moment of truth. Thursday morning arrived with a strange sense of calm washing over me. I'd prepared for this day meticulously, choosing my outfit with particular care. A tailored charcoal suit I'd purchased for the occasion, accented with a subtle jade silk blouse that brought out the green in my eyes. It was an executive look, though no one would question it as being particularly out of character for me. I arrived at work to find my going-away party in full swing, a sad spread of supermarket cupcakes and lukewarm coffee in the break room. My colleagues had signed a card with generic well wishes and memories of projects we'd tackled together. I accepted their condolences with grace, playing my part in this corporate theater. "We'll miss you around here," said Javier, giving me an awkward side hug. "It won't be the same without your problem-solving magic." "Thank you," I replied, meaning it. Many of these people were genuine colleagues who had no part in Thomas's machinations. "I'll miss this team too." Thomas stood at the edge of the gathering, checking his watch frequently. The board meeting was at 2 p.m., and as department head, he'd need to prepare his quarterly presentation. I knew exactly what was in it. I'd helped design the reporting framework years ago. "Kaylee, could I see you in my office when you're done here?" he asked, not waiting for an answer before walking away. 15 minutes later, I sat across from him, watching as he shuffled papers on his desk. "I wanted to thank you for handling this transition so professionally," he said without looking up. "It's refreshing considering your tenure with the company." The slight emphasis on tenure made it clear what he really meant: my age. It seemed the appropriate response, I replied evenly. Thomas finally met my eyes. "Your severance package is generous. 2 months' salary, plus your unused vacation time. The paperwork will be ready for your signature tomorrow." "I appreciate that." He leaned back in his chair, curiosity finally getting the better of him. "I have to ask, you've been surprisingly calm about all this. Did you see it coming?" I allowed myself a small, enigmatic smile. Let's just say I've learned to prepare for all contingencies in my time here. Thomas's expression hardened slightly. "Well, company needs evolve. Fresh perspectives become necessary. I'm sure you understand." "Completely," I agreed. "Change is inevitable in any organization. Sometimes it comes from unexpected directions." His eyes narrowed at my cryptic response, but before he could press further, his phone buzzed with a reminder. "I need to prepare for the board meeting." "Of course," I said, standing to leave. "Good luck with your presentation. I've always found the board to be quite attentive to details." As I walked out, I could feel his eyes on my back, a new uncertainty in his gaze. My calm acceptance had planted a seed of doubt, exactly as I'd intended. Back at my desk, I fielded a text from Catherine. Conference room A, 1:30. Come through the executive entrance. I spent the next 2 hours meticulously organizing my desk, backing up personal files, and creating detailed instructions for Olivia. To anyone watching, I was simply being thorough before my departure. At 1:15, I picked up my leather portfolio and headed toward the restroom, a perfectly normal afternoon activity that wouldn't raise suspicions. Once out of sight from the engineering department, I changed course, taking the elevator to the top floor where senior executives had their offices. The executive suite had its own private entrance to the boardroom, a door that I had never had cause to use in my 10 years with the company. Until today. Catherine was waiting for me in the hallway, her normally serious face softened with anticipation. "Ready to make history?" she asked quietly. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. As ready as I'll ever be. "Perfect," she replied, checking her watch. "The other board members are already seated. Thomas will enter through the main door at exactly 2 p.m. Let's make sure we're in position before then." Together, we walked toward the executive entrance to Conference Room A, where everything was about to change. The boardroom of Peterson Engineering exuded power and tradition. 12 high-backed leather chairs surrounded an immense mahogany table that had witnessed decades of critical decisions. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of San Francisco's skyline, a constant reminder of the heights to which the company had climbed. By 1:45 p.m., 10 board members were already seated, engaged in pre-meeting small talk. Catherine nodded subtly toward an empty chair on her right, my designated seat. I felt a momentary flutter of nerves as I took my place, but it quickly subsided as several board members smiled in recognition. William Harrison, the 70-year-old chairman of the board, extended his hand. "Ms. Thompson, we're delighted to finally have you join us officially. Catherine has spoken highly of your operational insights." "Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I appreciate the opportunity," I replied, my voice steady despite the significance of the moment. For the next 10 minutes, I was introduced to each board member. Most knew me by reputation or from previous project presentations, but this interaction was different. I was now their peer, not a subordinate reporting up the chain. At precisely 2 p.m., the main door opened. Thomas entered, carrying his presentation materials and looking confident. He greeted several board members by name as he made his way around the table, placing copies of his report at each seat. Then his eyes landed on me. The change in his expression was subtle but unmistakable. Confusion, followed by disbelief, then rapidly shifting to alarm. "Kaylee? What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice pitched slightly higher than normal. Before I could respond, Catherine stood, commanding the room's attention. "Let's begin," she announced, gesturing for everyone to take their seats. "Before we move to department reports, I have an important announcement." Thomas remained standing, his gaze darting between Catherine and me, clearly trying to piece together what was happening. "Please take a seat, Thomas," Catherine directed, waiting until he complied before continuing. "As you all know, Peterson Engineering has been undergoing strategic restructuring to better position ourselves for the challenges ahead. After extensive evaluation, the executive committee and I have identified critical operational improvements needed across all departments." Thomas fidgeted with his pen, no longer looking at me. "To lead this effort," Catherine continued, "we required someone with deep institutional knowledge, proven technical expertise, and the ability to bridge divisions within our organization. I'm pleased to announce that Kaylee Thompson has accepted the position of Chief Operations Officer, effective immediately." A round of applause filled the room. Several board members nodded approvingly in my direction. As COO, Kaylee will oversee all operational aspects of the company, including engineering, production, supply chain, and quality assurance, Catherine explained, her voice clear and firm. All department heads will report directly to her. creating a more streamlined decision-making process. Thomas's face had drained of color. I wasn't aware of this reorganization, he stammered. The decision was finalized 3 weeks ago, Catherine replied evenly. On a need-to-know basis. William Harrison leaned forward. Ms. Thompson's appointment was unanimously approved by the executive committee. Her first task will be conducting a comprehensive review of all departments, identifying inefficiencies and opportunities for growth. I finally spoke, keeping my voice professional and measured. I'm looking forward to working with all department heads to optimize our operations. Everyone brings value to this organization, though sometimes it requires the right position to maximize that value. Thomas's eyes met mine, understanding the subtle message. His department was under my purview now. His decision to replace me would be subject to my review. Now, Catherine said, masterfully moving the meeting forward, let's proceed with the quarterly reports. Thomas, I believe you're first. Thomas stood on unsteady legs, fumbling with his presentation materials. The confident department head who had dismissed me days earlier was gone, replaced by a man suddenly questioning every decision that had led to this moment. Before you begin, I interjected gently, I'd like to discuss the staffing changes you proposed earlier this week. Perhaps we should revisit some of those decisions. The silence that followed was profound. Thomas cleared his throat, a bead of sweat visible on his temple. Perhaps we should discuss departmental staffing after the meeting, he suggested, his voice strained. Actually, I replied, maintaining a neutral tone, since it affects the quarterly projections you're about to present, we should address it now. I turned to the board. Thomas has proposed replacing our senior design engineer, the position I held until today, with a recent graduate who has no industry experience. Several board members exchanged concerned glances. The Westlake project is entering its most critical phase, I continued. Changing key personnel now creates unnecessary risk to both timeline and budget. William Harrison frowned. Is this accurate, Thomas? The Westlake contract represents 20% of our annual revenue. Thomas's presentation folder trembled slightly in his hands. I believed fresh perspectives would benefit the team, he said, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. But obviously, with the new organizational structure, we can reassess. Indeed, I agreed. In fact, I've already spoken with Diana Ford about stepping into the role. Her 15 years of experience and familiarity with the Westlake specifications make her the logical choice. Catherine nodded approvingly. Diana is an excellent engineer. I support this decision. The look of defeat on Thomas's face was unmistakable, but he managed to proceed with his quarterly report. His usually confident delivery was replaced by hesitation and frequent references to notes. When he finished, the questions from board members were pointed and occasionally critical, a stark contrast to the easy reception he typically enjoyed. As the meeting progressed through other departmental updates, I made careful notes and asked thoughtful questions that demonstrated my comprehensive understanding of the company's operations. By the time we reached new business items, the dynamic in the room had shifted palpably. Board members increasingly directed their questions to me, rather than Catherine or the department heads. Near the meeting's conclusion, Catherine introduced another agenda item. As part of our restructuring, we'll be reviewing each department's age demographics and succession planning strategies. Recent data suggests our most innovative solutions have come from cross-generational collaboration. She displayed a slide showing productivity metrics across different age groups. As you can see, teams with age diversity consistently outperform homogeneous groups. Kaylee will be leading an initiative to ensure we maintain healthy age distribution throughout the organization. I caught Thomas's eye across the table. Experience and fresh perspectives both have value when properly integrated, I said. I look forward to working with all department heads to optimize their team compositions. The meeting adjourned at 4:30 p.m., As board members gathered their materials and engaged in post-meeting conversations, Thomas approached me cautiously. "Congratulations on your promotion," he said stiffly. "Had I known, you'd have made different decisions," I finished for him. "I understand completely." He nodded uncomfortably. "About Olivia." "She's talented but inexperienced," I said. "I think she'd benefit from our junior engineer development program, rather than being thrown into a senior role prematurely. Don't you agree?" Thomas knew he had no choice. "Of course, I'll inform her of the change." "No need," I replied. "As COO, I should welcome all new employees personally. I'll meet with her tomorrow to discuss her actual role and set appropriate expectations." Catherine joined us, effectively ending the conversation. "Kaylee, the executive team is gathering for dinner at Bayside Restaurant at 7. We'd love for you to join us." "I'd be delighted," I said, collecting my notes. As Thomas walked away, Catherine watched him with a calculating expression. "He'll either adapt or find himself increasingly marginalized," she observed quietly. "Everyone eventually faces the consequences of their decisions," I replied. "Some sooner than others." The sun was setting over San Francisco Bay as I left the boardroom through the executive entrance. Not as a visitor this time, but as someone who belonged there. Tomorrow, the company-wide announcement would make my new position official, but today's reversal of fortune was satisfaction enough. The 10 years I'd invested in Peterson Engineering had finally paid off, though not in the way Thomas had intended when he'd called me into his office with that satisfied grin just days ago. Friday morning's company-wide meeting brought a palpable buzz to the auditorium. Employees from every department gathered, whispering speculations about the organizational changes mentioned in Catherine's email. I stood backstage with Catherine and the executive team, dressed in a navy suit that signaled my new authority while still feeling true to myself. "Nervous?" Catherine asked, straightening her blazer. "Surprisingly, no," I replied. "It feels right." At exactly 9 a.m., Catherine took the stage to enthusiastic applause. I watched from the wings as she outlined Peterson Engineering's vision for the future, emphasizing innovation, collaboration, and strategic growth. "To lead us through this next chapter," Catherine announced, "I'm pleased to introduce our new Chief Operations Officer, Kaylee Thompson." As I walked onto the stage, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Engineers who had worked alongside me for years stood in applause. Project managers who had seen my solutions save impossible deadlines cheered. Even the administrative staff with whom I'd always maintained respectful relationships showed their approval. Thomas sat in the third row, clapping mechanically, his expression unreadable. "Thank you," I began, waiting for the applause to subside. "For 10 years, I've had the privilege of solving problems at Peterson Engineering. Today, I'm honored to help shape our collective future." I outlined my vision for operational excellence, emphasizing collaboration across generations and departments. "Experience and fresh perspectives both have tremendous value," I said, making brief eye contact with Thomas. "Our strength lies in harnessing both." After the presentation, employees approached to offer congratulations. Olivia, looking slightly confused, waited until most had dispersed. "Ms. Thompson, Kaylee," she began tentatively. "I'm a little unclear about my position now." I smiled reassuringly. "Let's meet in my office in an hour. I think you have great potential, just not in the role Thomas originally proposed." As the crowd thinned, I spotted Javier giving me a knowing grin and a thumbs up from across the room. Perhaps he'd suspected something all along. The transition into my role as COO happened more smoothly than anyone might have expected. By Monday morning, I had moved into the executive suite on the top floor, a spacious corner office with windows overlooking the Bay Bridge. The contrast to my former cubicle was striking, but I made sure to bring along the small jade plant that had survived 10 years of engineering crises with me. Some continuity was important. My first official week was packed with meetings, getting to know each department head personally, reviewing ongoing projects, and assessing operational bottlenecks. I made a point of being visible throughout the building, visiting departments and speaking directly with employees at all levels. This wasn't just good leadership. It was a message that the barriers between executives and staff were being dismantled. Thomas had been notably subdued. Our first one-on-one meeting had been brief and focused strictly on his department's metrics. He avoided direct eye contact and kept his responses clipped and professional. I neither gloated nor referenced our previous dynamics, treating him with the same respectful professionalism I showed all department heads. On Friday afternoon, Catherine stopped by my office with 2 cups of coffee. "So, 1 week in, how does it feel?" she asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Challenging in all the right ways," I replied honestly. "There's so much opportunity for improvement." She nodded, looking pleased. "The board is impressed with your approach so far. William Harrison specifically mentioned your talent for asking the right questions." "I've had years to think about what I'd do differently if given the chance," I admitted. Catherine smiled knowingly. "That's exactly why you were the right choice. Oh, and I thought you'd want to know. Thomas has requested a transfer to our Seattle office." "Running away?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "He claims it's for family reasons," Catherine replied, "but we both know better." I considered this news thoughtfully. "Let's approve it. Sometimes a fresh start benefits everyone." Catherine raised her coffee cup in a small toast. Spoken like a true executive,